So the Deathtrap Rogue is still the best fucking rogue build you can possibly play in Diablo 4. If I'm being honest, I'm sure there's something better out there, but genuinely this is one of the easiest and arguably, I mean, you could say this is boring to play because it's so simple to do, but I'll explain how all of it works and like why it does what it does. But this is the most fun I've had in a long time, like probably in 5 seasons or something like that. So first things first, I want to go over what's going on with the gear, how this works and why this works, because you use Deathtrap. When you cast Deathtrap, it immediately, if you look down here, I'm going to make sure my camera's on the other side for this part, but if you look down here, you immediately go full resource and empty your entire resource right away. Boom, boom, boom. So that's like per click. So every time I do this, I am resetting my alt on command. So if you hold it down, you look like this. It's just bananas how this works. And I know it's been around for a couple of seasons. I don't care. I never played it until this season, and I still think it's genuinely insanely overpowered. Well, maybe compared to some other things, it's not. But yeah, it is so strong. So the basic part of why this works, like why this alt is just resetting right away, which, by the way, resets all of your bar cooldowns. So let's say I use all my things, everything's on cooldown or whatever. Every time you alt like that, your entire bar resets. So it's just, you can sit here and hold down this button and you can just like tap dash over and over and over. It's almost like Ingeom or whatever that sword was called from Diablo 3. It's crazy. So what happens is one of your pieces of gear, and I'll go over all the gear here in just a second, but one of the pieces of gear is Beastfall boots. And what this does is it gives you a bunch of max resource. That's extremely important. So we'll talk about that soon, but it consumes your entire resource bar and enhances your damage by however much it consumes. Now, that works hand in hand with your rogue. Is it special? Yeah, it's called specializations. Preparation, moving my camera again so you can see it. Yeah, it's called preparation. So what this does is every 75 energy that you spend, no matter how you spend it, lowers your ult skills cooldowns by 5 seconds. So when you think about that, you go back to Beastfall boots real quick, and that's why I've got max tempers on maximum resource, so I can have over 150, because 75 times 2, for those of you that failed math somehow, is 150. So whenever I slap my alt button, I'm instantly regenerating my entire mana bar or energy bar or whatever every single click. It's nuts. So I realized when I was shooting part of the gear portion of the video that I didn't talk about aftermath, which is a part that coincides with Beastfall boots and preparation. It's the third piece of that little puzzle, like what regains all of your energy whenever you cast something, and I'll show you that super quick. Aftermath is down here. Every time you use an ultimate, you gain X amount of energy back. It's 25 per point, so you just need 6 in here some way, shape, or form. So you can put as many points as you need to in here, and you just need to have it restore 150 energy, and then you're good to go. So that's the mechanics of how it actually resets the cooldown and how it functions. Let's talk about the gear and see like what I'm using and why. And I'm going to try and go over this part pretty quickly, but you can pause if you need to on some of these things. I'm missing a really good amount of greater affixes. I know they kind of like drop like candy out of pinata these days, but I'm missing a lot of greater affixes, and a couple of my pieces are actually ass compared to like an endgame rogue, and I can still do tier 90s in the pit like in 5 minutes. It's kind of gross. I'm missing damage. I don't die, I'm just missing damage. And that's funny because I only have 300 armor shown here, but I use like armor, my consumables. I'll go over that later too, probably. But anyway, so Air of Perdition is pretty important. The main thing that we're going for is core skills, cooldown reduction, and critical strike damage. That's kind of like the main parts that we're going through or going for with most of our master working and tempering stuff. And then damage with Dark Shroud, but those we'll get there in a second. But yeah, so we've got crit chance here, which is cool. I think we crit nearly 100% of the time with this build regardless, so I don't know how much that matters. The core skills are what matters. Like my Deathtrap, for example, is only at rank 21. I got this build online by the time I had it at like rank 18 because I stacked enough CDR to get there, because your Deathtrap has to be at 10 seconds or less for that little wombo combo with Beastfall boots and preparation to work. So that's why we're aiming at the core skills here. I don't care about the rest of the stats on any of my gear necessarily, because that also affects your damage that you output. If you mouse over this innately does like 30,000 or 30 million damage. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so Scoundrel's Leathers allows you to throw your Deathtrap across the screen like this. So I'm able to just like send it to Asia if I need to. Like if mobs are coming from over there, I can like toss it. And that's really important because your damage to distant enemies, which we'll see in the skill tree, matters. This item also gives you a damage boost every time you use your Deathtrap or any trap skills, but you're using that all the time. So you have basically a constant steroid for this. I'm using Yule Zan, whatever these are called, runes for like a rune word. It's so weird because the rune words in this game are so different than D2. I don't know why they did that, but whatever. But this gives us a really short window of overpower and critical strike, which is super nice. But that short window happens consistently because it's every time you use a cooldown. And then the other thing, which is probably the biggest deal of this whole piece of gear, is it makes all of your trap skills core skills. So even though this is an ultimate, it is also considered a core skill, which is why you stack core on everything else. Which leads us to the gloves. The only thing that you care about is dexterity, whatever resistance or life or armor. It's basically like dexterity, something survivable, and then core skills. These are trash. I've been meaning to replace these, but I rolled it. This cost me like 300 million gold to sit there and roll over and over until I got 2 to core skills. And then I had to remaster work this piece of shit like 800 times to finally get a +1 to core skills. That it was just really frustrating. But temper Dark Shroud damage, Dark Shroud, every time you have your shadows up, your Dark Shroud shadows, your damage is increased by a ridiculous amount. That is going to be tempered on your weapons as well. So Eyes in the Dark is next on here, and most guides say that this isn't necessary, but I don't believe that because one, it arms your traps immediately, which is super cool, but the ridiculous amount of ultimate skill damage that it adds on here is, to me, that's absolutely insane. And then it pluses a bunch of ability points to your Aftermath, which is what's needed as part of that like trio for Beast Fall, Preparation, and Aftermath, how your energy bar goes down and up and down and up and down and up. Like you can see it flashing. Hopefully the refresh rate on this video is good enough, but you can see my energy orb flashing because it's refilling. That's pretty insane. And then Deathtrap deals increased damage, which again, it's just nuts. There's so much more damage you get from using Eyes in the Dark. I don't know what else you would replace this with. Beastfall boots, I was talking about this earlier. This is very important. The only pieces of this that you need, the run speed is cool, but you need to masterwork maximum resource on these, like I think twice or 3 times if you get a bad rolled. I got a GA one, so I only had, which was fantastic. Thank you, Don, for this. Actually, I still haven't replaced these because these are what he gave me. If you get one of these that has ultimate cooldown reduction, greater affix, and maximum resource, that would be nuts. That would help you get below that 10-second threshold with Deathtrap, so that would be super nice. My bow, I actually have a good bow that had dex and critical strike damage on it, so I'm pretty proud of that one. And then you're just tempering Dark Shroud damage per Dark Shroud shadow that you have, and then chance for Deathtrap to deal double damage. And that same thing follows for your other 2 weapons. These 2 weapons are butthole, so don't look at them too closely. But yeah, these ones, this lucky hit chance for poison damage, that comes into play from alchemical advantage, whatever. The alchemy advantage is the poison advantage one. It gives you more, like, I think it's damage and crit. We'll see that in the skills section here in just a second. But otherwise, yeah, Dark Shroud Shadows is your biggest thing. And then you also go for more of the Deathtrap dealing double damage because this, yet again, for like the 84th time, this build doesn't die, so you just need damage, and more damage. So your ring, same thing, Deathtrap cooldown reduction, that's really important, and then Dark Shroud shadow damage, or Dark Shroud damage per shadow that you have. I hate the way that doesn't roll off of your tongue, but Deathtrap cooldown reduction is what I wanted to try to masterwork as much as I can on this ring, and another legendary ring if you don't get a Starless Skies. I got really lucky and got a Starless Skies like the moment I hit level 60, and it was double greater affix, which is cool. Unfortunately, none of them were to my core skills. However, I masterworked 3 times in a row core skills on this, and I magoo-gooed all over the place when I did that. It was insane. So that's really exciting on that. And then this necklace, this amulet, it's good. There's a few good things about it, but it's also like kind of not great because I don't believe that the plus damage percent does anything to our stuff. If it does, great, that's fantastic. But I got a really high dexterity affix on here, and then I rolled cooldown reduction because again, I was struggling to get below that 10-second mark. Now I'm like far below it. Yeah, when you're building this, you'll see what I mean, but now I'm far below that threshold, so I probably don't need that. But I masterworked this probably 100 and maybe 150 times over and over and over to try and get a double greater affix on Deathtrap. I had to farm so much OBDUCITE for this character. It was ridiculous, but so worth it. And you can really get this online early just by using the Enchantress to reroll one of the stats to cooldown reduction. And I didn't realize that until way later, so that I felt like a moron there. But that kind of summarizes the gear for the most part. The Spellcraft, I don't really pay too much attention to the Spellcraft parts here. I just followed a guide for this, and I'll have a link to the guide that I used down in the description. And the same story will go for Paragon when I'm starting to go over the Paragon. I'm only going to go over like the most important parts of this. You use Disintegrate, and that's pretty much it. I know Disintegrate increases the damage you deal by at least a little bit. You get to execute mobs, which is super nice. That helps when you're in like the higher level pit tiers, when things don't die immediately. You got to actually like burn mobs down. By the time they get down to like a certain point, you just like one-shot them, which is super nice. So this part's cool, but do your own research and figure out what you really want to run with all of this. But on the abilities or on your actual skill trees, speaking of, pick whatever the hell you want on these. Like none of these matter at all because you don't use them. On the second part, none of this really matters. We just have close damage reduction. This keeps us from dying. Caltrops is really important because Methodical makes it cold damage, and this is your version of Chill for Frigid Finesse, and that's coming down a little bit lower in the skill tree. But this is really important because that's your only source of chill as far as I'm aware. I can't think of anything else that causes things to chill. I have 3 into Weapon Mastery because some guides call for using Poison Trap. I don't use Poison Trap because I don't see the point to it necessarily. I might in like pit 100s and above, but I just use Weapon Mastery. I feel like it's a good general one. But then Unstable Elixirs is a big damage steroid every time you use a potion, which you don't normally have to do, so it's a good buff. I would say like put your potion and then all of your steroids in a row, so you can just kind of like krat on your keyboard or on a controller or something, however you play. There is a nuance on controller to this build that actually makes it a little bit overpowered, and I'll explain that later too, if I remember. But yeah, trick attacks, you have some chance to stun with this build, so it increases your critical strike chance and damage, so yet another steroid. This part of the tree, I think, is Decepticon part. You use Concealment. This is not exactly an escape anymore. It's more just another boon. Reason that this is so important is it's your main and I think only source of Unstoppable. And when you use Concealment, you make enemies vulnerable as long as you crit them. And this is really fucking embarrassing. I've been using the wrong one for this entire time. Holy shit. Nobody look. All right, nobody look at that. And next on the tree is Smoke Grenade. Subverting Smoke Grenade is a form of poison damage, but it also, the enhanced part of this, makes things take more damage from you. This is only used necessarily in like pits. When you're speed farming or speed running stuff, you almost never use this, but this is only used in like high level pits when you're trying to fight either elites or bosses. Bosses somehow drop faster than elites in most scenarios. It's a little weird. Malice increases your damage, Exploit increases your damage, and then Dark Shroud. Dark Shroud you want to keep up at all times. There's another way to use Dark Shroud when it's not on your bars. I don't use that method. I like actually making sure that it's just at maximum at all times. Dark Shroud is massive for your damage reduction. You genuinely just don't take a whole lot of damage. But Deadeye gives you damage. This is what I was talking about earlier. This gives you damage to distant enemies, which is super important. Alchemical Advantage. This is the one that's going to increase your attack speed, which somehow matters because you can throw your traps even quicker. But that is super nice regardless of that. And then Frigid Finesse. This is what I was talking about with the Caltrops. Frigid Finesse gives you an increased damage bonus to anything that's in your chill ring. But when you're fighting stuff like a world boss or something like that, then you use Caltrops and Smoke Grenades. Smoke Grenades actually, they're kind of like a double steroid, and don't forget your potion too. So potion, Caltrop, and Smoke Grenade are like your big damage enhancers. That's pretty important. Smoke Grenade does do something else. It's a subterfuge or subterfuge skill that matters when you're using Dance, which is later on in the Paragon tree, but that activates it. So you don't even have to rely on Concealment to do that. You literally are only using this because of the crit steroid and vulnerable from crits and the Unstoppable, which you do need to use Unstoppable more often than you think. Deathtrap is our #1 main Big Daddy skill that we're using. Aftermath is what regenerates all of our energy whenever we use Deathtrap, so it's like that constant do. And as long as you have a low enough cooldown reduction, which is kind of like the whole title of this video basically, is get CDR, then you can just sit there and cycle through Deathtraps like it's your day job. Unto Dawn is super necessary because it increases your Deathtrap damage by a shitload. Trap Mastery, yet again, gives you more critical strike chance. Second Wind is a huge one. If you notice that we have a barrier at all times, it's because of Second Wind. Every 100 energy that you spend gives you a barrier on yourself for whatever your life is, or you know how barriers work. This is season 9 at this point. And then haste is just going to give us extra movement speed. It doesn't matter about the energy regen. We don't use that at all, but movement speed and attack speed are super cool. So momentum I like to use because it's just a general buff. Like it gives you your damage reduction, it gives you your movement speed, and it gives you just raw damage output, which is nice. Exposure makes more damage gain the higher in pits you go, like the longer that enemies are lasting, the more you want to use exposure, for example. So I haven't tried this yet, but I'm pretty sure I can push higher than pit 90 comfortably. And by comfortably, I mean I'm clearing it in about 4.5 minutes right now, which is kind of ridiculous for a pit 90 for something that was supposedly super nerfed, because this build is ridiculous. But I have not tried exposure at all yet, and I might try that here in the future. But I personally like momentum because it's just a better all-arounder, and you build it up super fast because we're done with this skill tree here, because you're sitting there and just like tapping dash around. There's 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like by the time you're, I don't know, 30 feet deep in a dungeon, you're already 10 stacks of momentum. So that's pretty cool. For the Paragon, this one is fun and interesting. I won't dive too deep into this. I'm just going to show you the glyphs that we're supposed to be using and the legendary nodes and why we're using them. There's one glyph that I don't know why it's recommended from the guides that I follow, because I follow guides when it comes to Paragon. I do not have the time to like design this whole thing myself. There's not a chance in hell I could do this by myself. I mean, I probably could. I'm lazy. Come on, let's be real. So the very first one on the start, obviously, we're using versatility. This is the one that I'm trying to max the most because I believe, and by the way, my highest glyph is like 69. Actually, I think it's literally this one. But I'm trying to max this one the most currently after you get everything up to 46. I'm trying to get this one higher because it seems like it's giving me the highest damage return. So I think you're supposed to do versatility first. But the next board on here that we're using is No Witnesses. Your ultimate skills give you more damage from your damage to ultimate bonus. I don't know if that matters at all because none of our other skills are doing damage. You're literally just using Deathtrap. But yeah, so that's super sick. And then the glyph that we're using here is Ambush, and that just gives you a bunch more of like a trap steroid, essentially. The skill tree after that one is Eldritch Bounty. And while this gives you a little minor boost to your resistance, it gives you a ton of damage to your poison, shadow, and cold. The glyph that we're using here is Headhunter. It's just extra. It's a little bit of a damage steroid to elites and then just damage in general. This next glyph is what I don't necessarily understand why it's on all of like the recommended things, and it's our explosive glyph, because I don't know how often our stun grenades are actually doing damage. I don't even know where our stun grenades are coming from, besides from whenever you cast an ult and you drop a bunch of them around you. I don't know if they drop like at your mouse also. Maybe that's a part of the mechanics that I completely missed, but that's one of the things that I'm a little curious about, and maybe I'm missing the mark here because most guides say to boost this one first. So I could be doing this completely wrong. So take that with a grain of salt, do a little research, and figure out where stun grenades are. And if you actually do know where they are, can you please tell us in the comments down below, because I don't. And then Deadly Ambush is awesome because it gives you 30% more critical strike damage to things that are hit by your traps, which is our main skill anyway. Something cool in the Deadly Ambush Paragon board is down here. There's trap cooldown reduction. This helps you get even closer to that 10% mark. And to be honest, if you get down to like 10.5, 10.7, anything below 11 seconds, you can still very effectively play this build. It's just a lot smoother when it's just that snap, the instant CDR on your alt skills. The very last Paragon board is Dance Macabre. And this is every time you use a mobility skill or a subterfuge skill, you're getting 30% of your damage is increased. That means your dash, your concealment, your smoke grenade, pretty much like everything that you use on the regular is giving you a non-stop steroid. So that's fantastic. And then this glyph is my second favorite one. Unless explosive, and unless I really, really am missing the mark on explosive, this is my second favorite one, Canny, just because it's another just raw damage output increaser. So the two that I've been boosting the most is Canny and our first one, versatility. Paragon boards are something that you can do whatever you want to. I probably sound really stupid whenever I'm trying to explain these, because most of the time my Paragon boards are like a copy paste with like a few little modifications here and there. If I've got, let's say, like 200 Paragon points that I use from a guide, I'll put maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 of my own in places that I think I need. That part's entirely up to you. Please use a guide and don't take my full advice when it comes to the Paragon board. So now that we kind of get an idea on like how this does what it does. By the way, these, if I zoom in, all those little things, those are the stun grenades that I'm talking about. But let's do a pit. I'll go like we'll go pit 80 and just show you what that looks like. It'll probably take like 3-4 minutes as part of this video. I'm gonna remove my face from this so that you don't have to see it or anything, and just enjoy the show. And if I die, we run it back and do it again. But I'll see you right when this is done. And that's that. That's a pit level 80. I don't know what was that, like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that, which is still kind of crazy. And there again, I'm missing so much damage still. I don't have any greater affixes on my damage on my weapons at all. I have not rolled any masterworking crits on my critical strike damage. There's so much room for improvement. I don't have a single perfect green gem in any of my gear at all. Wow, I'm missing so much other stuff. And I'm only Paragon like 196. I'm not even in the 200s yet, and I can do something like this on this build. It is genuinely insane. So hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, just throw them in the comments. I know it's hard for me to explain sometimes, so I have like an issue articulating like maybe half the time that I'm alive on this planet. If you have any questions, throw it in the comments down below. If you have anything that you want to add to this, throw it in the comments down below. Do me a favor and like this video. It's free and it really helps out the channel here. And if you really like this kind of content, then make sure you subscribe, because again, that's free too. If you want to join in on some of the conversations, a lot of us like to hang out in Discord and talk about the game or talk shit about the game, which is also very okay. Just don't be like super rude about it. But yeah, like hang out with us in Discord, open invite, whatever you want to do. And with that, we'll see you in Sanctuary.